to everyone who's here for joining our webinar today. I know that folks will probably trickle in as they're getting out of their 11 a.m. or 11:30 meetings. So nice to have such a great group of alumni and students today. And I'm so glad that those of you that are considering the MBA for Executives program at Yale SOM are joining us today as well. We will go ahead and get started. I'm thrilled to have you here. I'm thrilled to be able to introduce you to this great group of panelists today. But to get us started, I want to offer you a huge hello and a welcome to the MBA for Executives webinar at the Yale School of Management. My name is Joanne Legler, and I'm the Director of Admissions for our program. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today, or for those of you that are watching the recording, for taking the time to watch this at a later time. With that, this is a thrilling day for us. We are kicking off our newest webinar series called Ask an EMBA, and we're so fortunate to have a terrific panel of students and alumni with us. Over a quick 45 minutes today, our students and alums on the panel will take the time to discuss their experiences with making a change, a shift, or a transition in their job or their employment, whether that be one that they sought out, you may be found by a happy accident, were recruited for, or some other circumstance while they were pursuing their MBA for Executives degree or were at the beginning of their program. While all the students in the program are required to be employed as part of the EMBA program at Yale, we often find that they are either inspired or even sometimes poached to consider new opportunities and challenges as they begin to fill their toolbox with this great, sharp, new set of skills related to leadership and management, as well as expertise in their area of focus that they gained from the EMBA program. We really look forward to hearing their stories, including the resources that they might have relied on in their consideration. And if there are a few minutes at the end of our session, which we hope there will be, we'll open it up to your questions. So if you have any questions for the group, you can put them in the chat feature, and our moderator, Christina, will let some opportunity later on to do some Q&A. So the context for the panel, as I said, is a group of students and alumni who talk about their experience in the program, and particularly as it relates to jobs and job changes. I'm actually going to turn this over to our moderator, Christina White, member of the class of 2018. I'll let Christina introduce herself and then facilitate some quick introductions to the other panelists, and then take it from there with some great questions that she has for them. Looking forward to the discussion. So Christina, if you're ready, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Joanne. Really glad to be here. I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. As Joanne mentioned, I'm class of 2018 with an asset management focus. I was born and raised in New York, still live in New York. I'm currently a principal at Nuveen Asset Management within the Energy and Infrastructure Private Investments team. Prior to my current role, I worked at the Wallace Foundation, a national philanthropic foundation focused on arts and education for all. My work there specifically focused on accounting and finance. So not only did I make a job change, but I also made a career change during my time at Yale. One thing you can't learn about me via my socials is that I started playing tennis during the pandemic, and I have a pretty mean forehand, but really, really excited to moderate this conversation with an amazing group of panelists. So let's get started. We'll have everyone introduce themselves. Eric will kick us off, then Gina, and we'll have Imran, and finally Marina.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Ryan here in Boston. I work for the Iron Mountain Company as the CFO for the Records and Information Management business. Prior to that, I spent about 20 years with General Electric. I'm here in Boston with my wife and 2 daughters. And fun fact, I usually say that I have no sense of smell, but in the first class of 2021 introductory call, the woman directly behind me alphabetically also had no sense of smell. So I want to be sure that I give you something else in case this is more common than I realized. So I play the violin. I don't know if you can see there's a music stand back there, but that's one thing that's not going to come across in my professional profile, but that means a lot to me. Was Gina next?
Yes.
Thanks, Eric. That'll be a tough act to follow. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. My name is Gina Calder, and I'm on the healthcare track and class of 2022 in the Yale EMBA program. I'm currently in Missouri in a newer role. I've been here almost 5 months as president of St. Charles County Hospitals for BJC Healthcare. I was in New Haven at Young Haven Health for 14 years before making this jump. And something that you probably wouldn't be able to find about me no matter how deep you dig is that I'm actually working on a couple of children's book projects. I'm very, very passionate about women's empowerment and encouraging young women to pursue leadership opportunities. And so working on some books for girls along those lines. Glad to be here with you all today.
Great. And hi, everyone. My name is Imran Ali, and I'm from the class of 2019, and I was in the asset management track. I currently work in the investment management industry in Boston. I'm a healthcare investor at a firm called Amundi Asset Management. And one thing you may not know readily about me from LinkedIn is that I come from Singapore, although I have not been back to my homeland in 15 years. So that's my scoop.
And thank you. Good morning. My name is Marina. I'm the class of 2022, graduate next May. I'm currently in Seattle, but I'm from Washington, DC, specializing in sustainability with a focus on agribusiness and food security. And I recently joined an agribusiness company that specializes in animal nutrition that's based in Kentucky. And I was able to find that opportunity through an elective last spring here at Yale. One thing that you can't find about me online is that I lived behind the Flamingo Hotel in Vegas for almost a year, and I got paid to do it.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Well, thank you everyone for being a part of this amazing panel. Let's get started. Let's start from the beginning. Let's dig into your decision to get an MBA and why Yale SOM. What motivated you to apply to business school, and what was your experience considering an MBA and finally applying to the program? Maybe you can share a little bit about whether the option to choose an area of focus influenced this at all. We'll get started with Gina, and then we'll have all of the panelists discuss this.
Thanks, Christina. So I was actually at a conference in 2019, sitting next to one of the leaders at the Commonwealth Fund at a dinner, and we just started talking, and he kind of said to me, hey, have you ever thought about getting your MBA? And this is Dr. David Blumenthal. And I said, no, absolutely not. I'm all set with school. I've got my terminal degree as far as my career is concerned. And so, nope, I haven't considered it and I'm not going to. And he didn't really take no for an answer. So the more we talked about it, I kind of said, okay, I'll at least start talking to some other colleagues and friends. And really, I think for me, where I evolved to was recognizing how much more runway I have in front of me in terms of my career. I was already on an executive leadership track. I was a vice president at the time and felt as though I probably would absolutely need some additional tools given the dynamic nature of the healthcare environment. I'm on the healthcare delivery side today, but I think the partnerships in healthcare delivery are going to need to change in order for us to move forward with transformation in the industry. And so I eventually got to the place where I said, you know what, he's right. I need to seriously consider this. I have 2 other degrees from Yale, so that was probably the easier part of my decision-making process in terms of which programs to pursue. But Dr. Howie Foreman, who's our faculty director for the healthcare track, and who had a huge hand in actually founding the executive MBA program, is a longtime mentor of mine. And so I immediately reached out to Howie and, we talked a little bit more about it. And it seemed like after Howie and I talked, everyone I met after that was somehow related to the program. So it was like, confirmation after confirmation that this is something I needed to do. In terms of the process, I thought it was really fantastically well done, well curated. You feel very supported. Any questions that you have, Joanne and team are always there to answer them. Feedback and making sure that they're very responsive. So that was great. I actually applied in the first round. So I knew pretty early on, what was going to be my next, and was really excited when I got into the program.
Great. Marina, would you like to share?
Sure. I think what's really remarkable about the Yale program is, as Gina said, it allows you to pivot up, but it also allows you to pivot back in. So I was motivated to apply to business school because I spent my early career working overseas with the United Nations World Food Program, which is the UN's humanitarian and logistics arm that deals with food security. So I worked in Italy, India, Panama, and Tanzania. But it wasn't until my last few years in Tanzania that I realized the impact and the force that the private sector could have when you're trying to extend services to different markets, and especially the food market. And it wasn't an area I was familiar with. So in the back of my head, I knew that I needed to understand that. I came back to the US, did a full immersion kind of in the US, worked in Seattle here for philanthropy as well, Christina, but I was on the tech philanthropy side. And then I did a deep dive into US electoral politics, working on presidential campaigns in Nevada. But what was good about the MBA is that when COVID hit, I just paid a lot of attention to what the food system was doing. And although there was a lot of loss of life, there was also an extraordinary ability to keep us alive through the food systems. And that reminded me of my experience with WFP that I had been out of for 5 years. And so I had clarity that I needed to go back now. It was the time to do so. So that inspired me to enroll in the program, to really focus on the agribusiness, to get back up to speed on the industry, which is changing incredibly fast. We've got alternative meats, we've got carbon capture. So I really wanted to get back up to speed with the agriculture and agri-food system. And the program at Yale could do that. And I was excited because I would also have access to the School of Environment and the law school. So I know that I could take classes from those two universities as well.
Amazing, amazing. Imran?
Yeah, so for me, I've been working in finance for quite a while now, over 17 years now. And years ago, when it was sort of that time, the traditional time to apply for typical 2-year full-time programs, I was a little naive at that point, and I just didn't think at the time that I needed to go back to business school. I was doing what I wanted to do professionally. I was all set. But as the years passed, I increasingly felt that sense of regret, that panging or that yearning of something that I missed out on, not just because of the possible practical benefits for going back to business school, like job advancement or learning new things, but I felt that I was just missing out on, life-changing experiences, meeting smart, brilliant new people, building new networks, and just being part of a new community. So when I just sort of, by happenstance, learned about the EMBA program at Yale, it was like a light bulb went off, and it occurred to me that, wow, I can, all these years later, I can still get all of these things, these valuable things, and I actually have not missed the boat. So I jumped at the chance. This was back in 2016, applied, and fortunately got in, and made it through the program successfully. And and Yale specifically, why Yale? Come on, it's Yale. So the university is amazing. The business school campus, if you see it, is fantastic, and the Evans Hall is something to behold, and the brand again is amazing. The mission of the schools is really inspiring, and just the great admissions team and the whole team of the school is really sort of welcoming and supportive too. And last but not least, of course, being in Boston, proximity to Connecticut was very helpful too. So it was really a no-brainer for me, and I'm so glad that I did it.
And we'll wrap up with Eric.
Thank you very much. So for me, it was entirely about the sustainability program and gaining access to that knowledge, to that language, to looking from where I was positioned at the time out from the gas power business within General Electric and trying to understand the evolution of that industry, the mix changes going on with renewables. How could I, knowing where things needed to go, position myself in the most effective way to have an impact there and build a set of transferable tools in that area in general that could allow me to step from industry to industry if I wanted to, and come in with the same ambition and the same ability to have impact. So that I only applied to one school. I only looked for one school. That was the program I wanted. And that's what I went after. And I think if I were to generalize, since it was really only about that program, the university experience for me, this might be a little cheesy, is about like the conversion of the potential to the kinetic. Right, we all have a ton of potential energy. We all have a finite amount of time. Where are we going to focus? Where are we going to step in to drive change and pursue what is interesting? And if you can go into an environment where there's so much kinetic energy already, where there's so much happening from a resource standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, from an ambition standpoint, it's very much easier to be a part of solving big problems with smart people. And that's literally what I have conversations with my classmates about is, we're doing the classes, we're getting through the activities, but what do we want to work on? What partnerships do we want to form? What nonprofits do we want to start up? And that's what I did. That's what I'm still doing. And that environment that allows you to more easily latch on to the kinetic and realize your potential is what I wanted and what I think Yale brings. Obviously, you have to do the work. You're still yourself, right? It's a bunch of pretty buildings, but that stuff that comes together there is special, and I'm glad to have been a part of it.
Thank you, Eric. I mean, you all are so inspiring. But for me, going back to business school to get an MBA was a must. And as Imran mentioned, I think just being in that environment of learning and being exposed to such brilliant people and wanting to be around that space and environment was just like, okay, well, I need to go back to school. But what really did it for me in terms of why Yale was really around its mission of educating leaders for business and society. And that really spoke to me. I saw that play out in our classes and our team interactions and just the leadership opportunities available to us at Yale. My first experience at Yale was the Yale's philanthropy conference. Marina, I don't know if you had a chance to attend, but Yale is the first business school to host and offer a philanthropy conference. And so my first year, I helped plan the philanthropy conference where I brought in speakers from various disciplines and communities to talk about the future of philanthropy and how that intersects with the business community. My second year, I hosted and planned Yale's inaugural Impact Investing Conference and started a podcast where we interviewed thought leaders and entrepreneurs in the impact space. I couldn't have done that anywhere else. And so I'm so grateful for Yale and for that experience. I know we barely scratched the surface of our initial sort of job change conversation. So let's dive in. I'd like our panelists to really talk more about what your current job at the beginning of the program was. Maybe you can provide a quick description of the company and the position. And then if you can share with us the opportunity that emerged while you were there, and what was the new opportunity, and what were some of your thoughts or feelings when you were considering it. We'll get started with Marina, and then we're going to Imran and Gina.
Sure. So right before the EMBA program started, I was in Nevada running the presidential campaign for Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota. And campaign ended, COVID hit, so everything just went on pause. I moved back to DC and applied for the program. And I think, at first I was anxious. I felt that I needed to transition into my next job, but with the schoolwork, I actually, asked myself to be a little bit patient. And I said, get through the core work. Don't jump into anything fast. You're trying to switch careers, make it meaningful and make it thoughtful. And this past spring, we were able to take electives. I took an elective on food and agribusiness that was hosted in Ireland. It was incredible. It was just, the professor was so engaging. He's Irish. The Irish have a huge history of, being farmers and being good stewards of the land. And so that framing was really helpful to help us understand, the class understand, what the food industry is going through at the moment. And during that class, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, this is what I'd like to do. And so I reached out to the professor. I'm like, I'm in the process of trying to find new opportunities. Your class has really motivated me. Please keep your ear out if you hear of any opportunities that might arise within your network. And a few months later, there was silence for a few weeks, but just about 4 weeks ago, he reached out with this new opportunity. So it was exciting. There was a global network week last week, and I took the same course because it had different CEOs come in, a different class composition. So I was able to kind of double dip and reinforce that agribusiness learning in the span of 3 months.
Imran?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because as I was starting at SOM, I was actually in the process of already starting a new job at another asset management firm. So I was moving from one job doing a similar function to another one. So it was an interesting process because I had to not only convince my prospective new employer that I was in the midst of applying and starting up at Yale, but I also had to still go through the job interview process at the new firm too, which was really kind of an interesting summer of 2017. So, but really, I think the what was interesting about it was just the reasons that I think in some ways helped me get the new job was communicating that I was doing this program, I was going to Yale. In some ways, I got the benefits kind of pulled up front of going to business school, then you get the credential and you kind of can apply for new jobs. In some ways, I got that early because I was already sort of in the process. So the new employer, my new employer of my current firm, saw that, okay, he's investing in himself and his education and his career. So therefore we'll, proceed in this interview process with him. So I'm not sure if I would have made it, to my new job had I not gone back to business school. So in some ways it's hard to prove a negative, but I'd like to think that it was sort of reinforcing where while starting out at SOM, concurrently looking for a new job was actually very helpful. So it was an incredibly busy summer though, just to go through the interview process, do stock pitches, do my day job, and also start out at SOM. But I think it was very sort of, it worked out in the end, fortunately.
Absolutely, definitely worked out. So we have professors, new job. Gina, would you mind sharing?
Sure. So I was a vice president at Yale New Haven Health System and had been in that role for about 2 years. We had acquired a new hospital. I moved over to become the administrator of the new hospital and get them fully integrated into our health system. And so that's where I was and what I was doing when I started the program in the midst of COVID and in the midst of, lots of challenges, concerns, fears, and worries about injustices and inequities in our country as well. And so I got a call from a search firm, 3 months into the EMBA program, and it was enough of a challenge just to balance everything that I had just mentioned. So I get a call about this opportunity. And it literally came because of a mentor who I had engaged in my whole decision process around whether or not to pursue my MBA in the first place. And so, as we were talking, one of the things that he shared later was that what really struck him was my commitment to leading transformation in healthcare, and that I was willing to, sacrifice some of my discretionary time to really get myself immersed in a program where I felt that I could develop myself in a way that I could truly make a difference. I think into the points that other panelists have made, by building a community. I love what Eric said about being able to solve big problems with smart people. That was really what I wanted to be able to do and sought to do as part of the program. And so when the firm reached out to him to ask him about people that he would recommend for the role, I was the person that he told them that they should pursue. And so the rest kind of became history. It was a pretty quick process. I absolutely leaned on a lot of the resources available to us through the EMBA community, which made a huge difference, even in me deciding to return their call. Because at first I was kind of like, I've got enough on my plate. I really don't think I have the time to even think about, getting into a whole search process. And so, everything worked out phenomenally well. And now here I am 5 months later, serving as the president of 2 hospitals for BJC Healthcare. My previous organization was a nearly $5 billion organization. This new organization is a $6 billion organization, spans 2 large states out here in the Midwest, Missouri and Illinois. Lots of opportunities for growth in terms of our provision of care, but also for me professionally. So very excited about that. And I also happen to be the first Black female president in this organization, and youngest sitting president right now. So really excited. The roles I think are a little bit different in that I have a lot more autonomy now in this role. And so, it couldn't have happened at a better time, where I actually feel like I have the tools I need to effectively exercise that autonomy. And then also have the ability to build an all-star team to support the things that I have envisioned to accomplish here.
Awesome. Congrats, Gina. That's an amazing story. So we have professors, the Yale experience, mentors. That's a great transition to really talk about how you made a successful transition, and then some of the resources. I think, Gina, you started to talk a bit about that as well. Some of the resources at Yale SOM that helped you make that transition. And did you take advantage of any resources outside of Yale? So we'll get started with Eric. Be great to hear your story as well.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I was with General Electric, doing a lot of long cycle business finance leadership in their aircraft engines business, as well as most recently leading the commercial finance function for the power plant equipment business. I transitioned to Iron Mountain as the CFO for the records and information management business about halfway through the program. And there are definitely difficulties with doing this, right? It's obviously a complexity that you're adding in an already kind of busy life. If you're not relocating, it's a little bit more manageable. I also had to relocate, which made it extra crazy. But the thing that I want to emphasize with you guys is that the things that you're learning in the program create a natural blueprint and structure for assimilation into a new business, into almost any role. So when I was stepping into my business and trying to figure out how I wanted to restructure my team, how I wanted to think about the cultural transformation I wanted to catalyze there. The workforce class, it just walked me through it. Or when I was working, or frankly, the negotiations class. I mean, the professor literally sat with me one-on-one, and we did the negotiation together. And it wasn't like, oh, he was helpful. Like, he literally got me money, like one for one. He said, do this. I went and did it. I have more. So there's an easy connection, in particular on sustainability. Like, I have, based on the class research work that I did, I have specifically, let's say, sculpted the way we're approaching the transition from diesel fleet to electric vehicles across the world. How we're thinking about the recycling program we use for the data management barium ferrite tapes. How we're looking at the way we do external reporting and the frameworks that we use, our methods for analyzing new real estate and real estate upgrades, and the considerations we give for water efficiency or the utilities processes. All of that stuff came directly from my classwork, and I just live implemented as I was working. And that is, while it's difficult to juggle those things, if you come with it from that perspective, that everything you're doing in class is going to just be a frame for how you're approaching this new part of your work assimilation, it's really stimulating and also constructive. So Gina has to go. I was going to transition to her quick, but I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Christine.
No problem. Thanks for that, Eric. Marina, we'll have you chime in. Gina, we did have to say goodbye, but I'm very happy to have you within the panel. Marina?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I get excited listening to Eric because I also am in the sustainability track. And I think what's really exciting about the timing now with my new role, as I go into the second year where we'll start to specialize, is that I will have access to those tools to help usher and advise, this new company on how to do its materiality assessment, how to set targets or how to benchmark. And I think for me personally, this is very interesting. Since I worked with the UN and we designed and developed the goals, and I spent 10 years, delivering on them, to really be more thoughtful about how the private sector can do that, or maybe not do it, but just to set kind of realistic targets in order to do so.
Thank you for that. Marina. Imran, I know we had, would you like to share? I know we had two sustainability folks mention, some of the resources, but I know within asset management on our track, we definitely have gotten some really great exposure from not only the professors, but even some of the speakers they brought in. So we'd love to hear from your perspective how that impacted your job search.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great point, Christine. I think first and foremost, the speakers that we have at these colloquium sessions are fantastic. I think for however the program team does it, they always bring in these incredibly high profile, high powered, very kind of inspiring speakers, who span the gamut of industries and sectors. So that alone, I think, is very mind expanding. I think it also, creates for great, stories to bring back to work. One time we had Cliff Asnes from AQR who gave us a talk, and to hear from someone of that stature, it provides a lot of, I think, lessons and sort of value that you can take with you, I think, to your day job, in my case, asset management. So I think the speakers are really kind of really inspiring. I think just in terms of just practically in terms of the professors, the curriculum, there's a huge amount of resources at your disposal that I think translate to our day-to-day functions, right? Obviously, in asset management, there's a practical aspect to it where it's always great to get reinforced lessons and expertise on core concepts like corporate finance, accounting, boning up on basics or statistics, but also to broaden your horizons and perspectives using looking at strategy, marketing, and things that are in the core curriculum. So these are all things I think that made me a better investor, made me someone that I think just has more dimensions to when I speak to company management teams, for example, or to my colleagues at other investment firms. So I think it really kind of opened up, I think, my skill set broader. So I think that's the value, I think, and just the breadth, I think, of SOM's unique curriculum of the core plus the specialty focus tracks. I think that's very differentiating. I think that's how you really come out, I think, as a richer, I think, more sort of informed and enlightened person from the program.
Agree. I would definitely agree that the speakers that they brought in were just phenomenal. Yeah, it was such a broad spectrum. It ran the gamut in terms of the types of speakers that they brought in to really to make the experience at Yale much more impactful. So let's move on to, oh, sorry.
Actually, could I just add one more comment about resources? I spent a lot of time, toggling between the career development office and the Yale library, like the librarian. So I'd go to the career development office, I'd have a list of interests or like companies or just inquiries about how to complete my search. And they would give me some advice. And then I was surprised by how helpful the library was and all of the databases that they have on company profiles, company history, company forecasts. And so I think that expanded my view incredibly as I was going through my job search. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Agreed. Yale Career Services was very helpful as well, whether it's just your resume review or mock interviews or conversations on different industries or connections that they can put you in contact with in terms of alumni. I mean, I had a number of conversations with the career services team there, and just even having those the alumni coffee chats as well, that was also really helpful in the search. So we talked about why Yale, some of the resources at Yale that we've all taken advantage of, but let's dive into how did your decision to change jobs affect your time at Yale? So did it negatively or positively impact your experience there? And how did you utilize those resources and experience at SOM in your new role? So applying some of what you learned in the classroom and sort of outside of the classroom, but also within your new and current role. And we'll get started with Imran, or actually let's switch it up. Let's do Eric first. Again, Eric.
Yeah, sure. So, pardon me, I was just muted. So just to add a little bit on to what I was saying earlier, I think the the way I was able to use the course material and the output of my research to help make connections and kind of establish some credibility and establish some rapport with folks, particularly on the compliance and sustainability team, within Iron Mountain, as well as just, demonstrating sort of my own kind of curiosity and interest, I think helped to provide a space to have kind of introductory conversations, which was particularly difficult given I was transitioning in the kind of Zoom COVID land where I wasn't really meeting anyone in person. So having the platform of the work that I was doing in the classroom to stimulate some discussion and share some ideas when I was still trying to learn the business was I think particularly helpful, and I would add that as a kind of corollary to my earlier comments.
That's awesome. Imran?
Yeah, and one thing actually I wanted to add was it's just structurally the format of the program is really conducive to, I think, for new people starting out in new jobs or going through the job search process, because being sort of a bi-weekly program, Fridays and Saturdays every 2 weeks, that in effect is just 2 Fridays a month where you physically have to be away from your day job, which is actually an easy sell to make to a prospective employee as you make. So it sounds like a lot to chew on for both prospective students and your bosses. You might be like, oh, well, you're going back to school. This is going to be a big sacrifice. What about work? But it's actually not. I mean, it certainly is, obviously, but it's actually doable just given the practical format of the program. So I think that's sort of an underemphasized benefit, I think, which made it easy for everyone's super busy, but to still manage to find the time to work, to do what you need to do, to start a new job and be credible and be present to your and committed to your new job, but also still be a good contributor to your class and your team as well, and still learn as well. So I think the structure is very conducive for that. And also, and I was there, so I'm pre-COVID, so this is kind of ridiculous to say, but I mean, when Zoom was a novelty for us, just to have that ability for the moments when you couldn't be away from your desk for whatever reason and you had to remote into class, that was a great resource to have, which allowed you to still be present, but at least you could also still be at work and not get in trouble at your new job. So that was helpful. And last but not least, I'd just say Evans Hall, I mean, as a building, just practically speaking, it's a huge modern connected space. Everyone I remember from class would always have something blow up at work. They'd have to go out for meetings or take calls or whatever it is, and there's no shortage of places and of means to do so if you were in class on a Friday or heaven forbid a Saturday and had to deal with work issues. You could do it. So really, just practically speaking, the program and the structure is really sort of helpful to folks in starting a new career or a new job and wanting to hit the ground running.
Agree. Definitely the structure. And I would also include that the coursework really showed up in my day-to-day almost immediately. One of the first few deals that I worked on, it was a company we did a case study on in Professor Olaf's PE and VC course. And I was excited because not only did I have insight into the firm, but it also allowed me to speak confidently about the background of the people at the firm, their track record, and a specific transaction that I could call out or question during my due diligence. And so I think because of those types of classes, even with, as Eric mentioned, with the negotiations with Professor Dalian, I had Professor Dalian for negotiations. I mean, those classes and the professors are just phenomenal. They will work with you outside of the classroom, in the classroom, to tackle those issues or questions that might come up. And I would say Professor Garton's class, the future of global finance, impacts my day-to-day. I worked on the green infrastructure project with my team, and I had no idea at the time that it would become my life's work. And it's really only now, looking back, I can say like, wow, like that was such an amazing experience to have. And of course, Professor Garton is one of the best professors at Yale. Really glad that us as, EMBA students coming in part-time, that we had an opportunity to sit and speak with him and learn from him. So we'll wrap up. Well, we're not going to wrap up completely, but we'll move on to our final question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A after this question. And I think it actually came up in the chat box, but what piece of advice or best practice or something you wish you had known earlier that you'd share with the audience? either about making a job transition during the program or anything else related to the EMBA program. We'll get started with Marina. You can share.
Yeah, I think, I guess one piece of advice would probably, in retrospect, be to myself. And I would say, you know, just have patience. It's intimidating coming in, being in transition where all of your, you know, fellow cohort members are working full time and advancing. But I was able to, you know, just keep my focus. And I think what really helped was as soon as I found that clarity, it took a while, but as soon as I found that clarity, now I am just zoned in and starting year 2. And so I'm really excited about that. But so the advice is, don't worry, everybody has their own timeline, and just really, yeah, figure out what you want and go for it. Cause you have 2 years, 1 year's already gone. It flew by. And so the time just runs away from you.
Imran, would you like to share a piece of advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of echo what Marina said, I think there's 2 ways to think about if you're thinking about job changes or careers. There's 2 ways to think about it in the context of SOM. One, if your objective is to go to business school, go to Yale with express purpose of transitioning jobs, then I think, you know, looking at it and looking at my classmates and peers who went down this path, you have to be aggressively looking for job opportunities early, because to Marina's point, it takes time. You have to factor that in that process. And, you know, when I was interviewing for my current job, it took forever as well. So these are just long processes. So you have to bake that into your expectations. And 2, while you're at school, I mean, there's no better excuse to be job hunting than that. And, you know, when you ask the question by the interviewer, like, oh, why are you here? The answer is easy, because I'm in business school. That's why I'm here. So that's the one time you have a free pass to freely interview aggressively, I think, if that's your purpose to go back to business school. In my case, because I was sort of a little bit more squishier in what I wanted to get sort of a broader perspective and, you know, sort of networking and all that stuff, I think just thinking about jobs is more of a ongoing, or your career is more of a ongoing process where you just have to constantly ask yourself, you know, am I happy where I am? Am I where I want to be? Can I do better? And what do I need to get there? And these are sort of just introspective questions. I think anyone probably needs to ask themselves constantly anyway, before SOM or after SOM. So I think there's 2 ways to, you know, but if your purpose is to go back to school for job hunting, I would say start early and be aggressive about it.
You made such great points there, Imran. Eric, would you like to share?
Yeah, I have a quick one, and this might not apply to everyone, but when I was thinking about, you know, one bit of advice, looking back at my own experience, I would recognize and be reminded of the fact that time moves differently for you than it does for your children, and to be sure to bring everybody along with you, right? Because 2 years for you is not the same as 2 years, you know, for them, you know, when you're going from 2 to 4 or from 9 to 11. So being sure that you're keeping everyone a part of the process, and they you know, they want to know. There's a ton of interesting things that we're doing, and I think that I would have done more of that, or I would have been wise to remember that more frequently, let's say, through the process. So for those of you that have children, and that could be another whole other webinar about how to, you know, do this with a family, that's some advice.
That's so true. That's really important. I think friends and family as well, just knowing that you have to sacrifice so much of your time with them to really excel and pursue your MBA. I would say for me, the best piece of advice that I received was really the 2 years fly by so quickly. So jump in and get involved from day one. And I think Imran also mentioned that as well, just getting started early, especially if you're looking to change careers, or if you're looking to really start the job search process, and really having those conversations with alumni, and reaching out and connecting to folks that you might be interested in learning about their role. I think the alumni network within Yale, and more broadly EMBA as well, is just so amazing. So definitely take advantage of that. So we will move into the Q&A space right now. Oh, also one point I also want to mention. Don't be afraid, especially if you're looking to transition or change careers. So my transition was actually towards an internship. So I actually interned first, and it was through a Yale alum who was recruiting for a clean energy fund. And so I joined as an MBA analyst as an intern. And then from there, once I graduated, joined another firm as a full-time associate. So I would say be a little flexible as well, but also definitely reach out to the network that you have by being a part of Yale SOM. So we'll move into the Q&A. I think as a follow-up, I think it'll be interesting to hear what would you have done if there was something you would have done differently during your experience. In retrospect, like what would you sort of have done first or switched it up? Like how would you have done things differently during your experience? Marina, if you want to start us off.
Oh, sorry, could you repeat the question? How would I have done something different in my experience?
Yeah. Would you have done anything different than just being looking back at your experience at Yale? Would you have done anything differently?
I think, yeah, I think in my year one, we tend to get so focused on the coursework and the material, and everybody lives in 2-week periods. And I think the program team and the second years say, hey, you know what, look beyond the 2-week cycle. And it's hard to do that in the moment, but I think if I could have done anything differently, I would have taken a little bit more time to think and see longer term what was coming down the pipeline so that I could actually then navigate perhaps a bit more strategically in terms of the resources or classes that I wanted to take and take advantage of. Does that help answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Imran?
Yeah, I think 2 things I would have done differently. And, I think one, like Eric was saying, I have 2 young kids as well. So I was always in the mindset of, I'm going to go to Evans Hall, drive from Boston at dawn on Fridays, go to class and rush back home on Saturdays after lunch, whatever, or after afternoon. So I never actually got to take time to just immerse myself in, I mean, I did, but not as much as I would have liked in New Haven, and just appreciating what was around you, right? One of the values of going to SOM is, of course, the broader university, and this unbelievable amount of things at your disposal as a student there. And I wish I took more advantage of it at my time there. The other thing I wish I did, and maybe hopefully it isn't too late to do, is I just wish I connected more and leaned on the faculty more. I mean, there are some world-class professors there, just this A+ folks, and I just wish I wasn't so sort of myopic and just doing my homework and goofing off with my buddies and getting out of there to go home to my kids. I wish I was more involved with the faculty. I think they would have been. So, hopefully that's still an opportunity, but for future students there, please do so, because I think they are just there at your disposal and are amazing resources.
Totally agree with that. I would definitely recommend, leaning in on your professors and having those one-off conversations and finding out how you can be of assistance to them as well. I know it feels like we're getting so much and we're learning so much from them, but I think we can also assist as well. And I would say, even after graduation, there are always opportunities to connect with them. I just find, reaching out and remaining in contact with professors has been seamless. But I think, I guess did you?
It's okay, Christina, I'm gonna just jump in. We are past time. And so I know you guys are like, I can't believe 50 minutes have gone by, but they have. And I am floored by the conversations that have happened. I've learned so much myself just listening to you all. But unfortunately, we'll give the time back to our students who are on the panel and alumni and the students who have decided to join us today and wrap it up. I can't thank you enough for being here. What a fantastic opportunity to get to know you all individually, hear about your experiences. Thank you for being so candid and for putting it all out there for students who are considering this pretty big jump into a potential next step in their career. So I want to thank everybody everybody so much for their time. And I want to especially thank Christina for acting as such a wonderful moderator for us and giving everybody such wonderful time to be able to talk about their individual experiences. It's been a pleasure to see you all. I'm looking forward to seeing Marina again on campus very soon as we transition back to school time. And I hope to see Christina, Eric, and Imran on campus as alumni soon. And we're looking forward to welcoming Gina back soon as well. So thank you everybody for your time. I would just like to offer a quick reminder that you could RSVP for our next webinar in the Ask an EMBA series that's happening on July 13th. We'll be speaking to a group of rising second-year students, Marina and Gina, their classmates, in the first year of their program as they begin their second year with a look back on how that first year went. In addition, we have our next virtual information session with the admissions team on July 22nd. And as always, you can reach out to the EMBA admissions team at emba.admissions@yale.edu with questions at any time at all. So I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody's questions, but I appreciate everybody being here, asking such great questions, and can't thank our panelists enough. So on behalf of the MBA for Executives program and the admissions team, thank you to everybody, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and a terrific summer ahead. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.